What would you do if you discovered the young woman you'd been caring for like a daughter was actually your late husband's secret child? Kate thought she was rebuilding her life by helping others heal, until she found love letters that would shatter everything she believed about family loyalty and second chances. Smash that like button if you believe some secrets are too big to stay buried. Subscribe for more heart-wrenching stories about the families we choose versus the ones we're born into. Comment below. Should Kate tell Lily the truth about her father? What happens next will leave you speechless. Part 1. The first crack. The love letter fell from Daniel's old engineering textbook like a confession I wasn't ready to hear. I stood frozen in the storage room above the reading corner, holding pages that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Outside, November rain drummed against the windows of my cafe, where the scent of Colombian coffee mixed with old books and the lavender candles I burned to make the space feel like home. The paper was cream-colored expensive. The handwriting was feminine careful. My dearest Daniel. Last night was everything I dreamed it could be. When you held me, I forgot about the complications, the guilt, the impossibility of our situation. For those hours, we weren't a married man and his secret. We were just two people who found something beautiful in the chaos. My hands shook as I read words that made no sense. Daniel had been faithful, devoted. The construction accident that took him 5 years ago had been sudden, unexpected. A scaffolding collapse that the investigators said was pure bad luck. But this letter told a different story. "Mom, you up there?" Emma's voice drifted up from the cafe below, sharp with the impatience she'd inherited from her father. At 26, my daughter had built a successful architecture career in Boston, but she still treated me like I needed constant supervision. I stuffed the letter back into the textbook, my heart hammering against my ribs. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face what this meant. "Coming, sweetheart," I called, forcing steadiness into my voice. The wooden stairs creaked under my feet as I descended into the warm glow of the reading corner. Afternoon light filtered through large windows, illuminating the careful sanctuary I'd created here. Mismatched armchairs arranged around small tables, bookshelves lining every wall, the espresso machine that had cost me 3 months of savings, but brought the community together over perfect cappuccinos. Emma stood near the counter, her designer coat and clicking heels a stark contrast to my faded jeans and coffee-stained apron. She'd always been beautiful, Daniel's strong jawline softened by my mother's delicate features. But success had added an edge to her beauty that sometimes made me feel like I was looking at a stranger. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. I busied myself wiping down the espresso machine, needing something to do with my hands. "About what, Ed?" "About this place. About your future. About the fact that you're drowning here and too stubborn to admit it." The letter upstairs felt like it was burning through the floorboards. "I'm managing just fine." "Mom," Emma's voice gentled the way it used to when she was little, and trying to convince me to let her stay up past bedtime. "I've seen the books. The declining foot traffic, the competition from that new Starbucks on Main Street, the way you've been cutting your own salary but still paying Lily full wages." Heat flooded my cheeks. Of course she'd noticed. Emma had been helping with my bookkeeping since Daniel died, claiming I needed support, but really keeping tabs on my financial situation. "Lily needs the money more than I do," I said quietly. "Lily needs to figure out her own life instead of letting you enable her poor choices. You can't save everyone, Mom." I looked across the cafe to where Lily Martinez sat in the reading nook, her slight frame nearly hidden behind a stack of returned books she was processing. At 20, she should have been finishing her sophomore year at UConn. Instead, she was here organizing my inventory and trying to hide the subtle swell of her pregnancy beneath oversized sweaters. "She's a good girl in a difficult situation," I said. "She's a pregnant college dropout who's using your guilt about Dad to avoid taking responsibility for her life." Emma crossed her arms. "And you're enabling her instead of dealing with your own problems." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Emma met my eyes, and I saw Daniel's stubborn streak reflected there. "Lily's boyfriend dumped her the moment she told him about the baby. Her family basically disowned her. She has resources available, financial aid, family services, community programs. But instead, she's working here for barely above minimum wage, while you pretend running a failing cafe is somehow honoring Dad's memory. This place isn't about your father." I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "Everything you've done since he died has been about Dad. The cafe taking in strays like Lily refusing to even consider dating again. You've turned yourself into some kind of saint preserving his perfect memory, and it's not healthy. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. Emma wasn't wrong exactly. The cafe had become my cocoon, a place where I could control the narrative, where Daniel's presence still lingered in every carefully chosen book and hand-painted menu. But she couldn't see the letter burning upstairs, couldn't know that the perfect memory she thought I was preserving might be built on lies. Your father supported my dream of creating a community space, I said finally. This place brings people together. Dad's been gone for 5 years, Mom, and dreams don't pay rent. The bell above the front door chimed, and I looked up to see a man I didn't recognize stepping inside. He was tall and silver-haired, maybe mid-50s, with the kind of careful posture that suggested either military service or medical training. He wore a charcoal wool coat that looked expensive but well-worn, and his eyes held the particular mixture of curiosity and wariness I'd learned to recognize in people who were rebuilding their lives. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice carrying a slight warmth that felt comforting in the November chill. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," I said, grateful for the interruption. "How can I help you?" He smiled, and something in his expression reminded me of the way Daniel used to look when he was trying to solve a particularly complex engineering problem. "I'm looking for books on grief counseling, professional resources if you have them." Emma raised an eyebrow, but I nodded toward the psychology section in the far corner. "Third shelf, middle section. Are you a counselor?" "Retired physician, actually. Dr. Michael Hayes." He extended his hand, and I noticed the slight tremor. Hands that had spent years making precise decisions under pressure. "But I'm exploring new directions." "Kate Morrison," I said, accepting his handshake. "And this is my daughter Emma. Pleasure to meet you both." His gaze lingered on the cafe, taking in the cozy chaos with what looked like genuine appreciation. "This is a beautiful space. Very welcoming." "Thank you." I felt a flush of pride despite my earlier conversation with Emma. I wanted to create a place where people could find both good coffee and good books. Something shifted in Dr. Hayes' expression, a flicker of recognition or understanding that made my pulse quicken. "And have you succeeded in creating that kind of space?" "I like to think so, though it's been challenging lately." Emma cleared her throat meaningfully. "I should get going. My flight back to Boston leaves at 7. She hugged me with the brisk efficiency she brought to everything these days. "Think about what I said, Mom. That offer from the development company is still on the table. You could have enough money to start fresh anywhere you want." After she left, the cafe felt larger somehow, echoing with the space her presence had filled. Dr. Hayes browsed the psychology section with the methodical attention of someone accustomed to research, occasionally pulling books from the shelf to examine their contents. "Finding what you need?" I asked. "More than I expected, actually." He held up a thick volume on trauma therapy. "I'm impressed by your selection. Most bookstore cafes don't carry this level of professional material. I believe in serving the whole community. We have social workers, teachers, therapists in town. They need resources, too. And now, do you still feel like you're serving the community effectively?" The question was casual, but something in his tone suggested deeper interest. I studied his face, noting the lines around his eyes that spoke of years of careful observation of making life-and-death decisions based on subtle cues. "I try to," he said. "Though it's challenging when people think small businesses like this are outdated." "I imagine so." He set several books on my counter, pulling out a leather wallet. "But some things are worth preserving even when they're not profitable." As I rang up his purchase, I found myself studying his hands again. They were gentle, precise. Surgeon's hands. Something nagged at the edge of my memory, a half-formed thought I couldn't quite grasp. "Are you new to Millbrook?" I asked. "Very new? Just moved here from Hartford." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. I needed a change of scenery." The grief in his voice was familiar, recognizable. It was the same careful control I'd learned to maintain when people asked about Daniel, the way you learn to hold sorrow so it doesn't spill over onto strangers. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said softly. "And I for yours." He tucked the books into a canvas bag. "I have a feeling I'll be back soon. This feels like the kind of place where healing happens." After he left, I stood behind the counter feeling strangely unsettled. There had been something about Dr. Hayes, Michael he'd said to call him, that felt significant, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was just the recognition that passes between people who've lost spouses, the unspoken understanding of what it means to rebuild a life around absence. Lily appeared at my elbow, moving with the careful grace of someone learning to navigate the world with a changing body. "Nice man," she said, settling onto the stool behind the register. He spent a long time looking at those grief books, like he was searching for something specific. Maybe he was. "Are you okay, Mrs. M?" "You look worried about something." I forced a smile. At 20, Lily had developed an uncanny ability to read people's emotions, probably a survival skill learned from navigating her family's disapproval and her ex-boyfriend's abandonment. She saw too much, sometimes understood things that should have been beyond her years. Just thinking about what Emma said, about the future of the cafe. She wants you to sell it. It wasn't a question. She thinks it would be best for everyone. Lily was quiet for a moment, one hand unconsciously moving to rest on her small bump. "What do you think would be best?" The letter upstairs felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I don't know anymore, Mija. I used to think I knew exactly what Daniel would want, what he'd expect me to do. But lately what?" I looked around the cafe at the carefully arranged seating areas and hand-lettered menu boards at the corner where Lily spent her breaks reading young adult novels at the window table, where Mr. Patterson came every morning to read his newspaper and pretend he wasn't lonely since his wife died. This place had been Daniel's encouragement, yes, but it had become my identity, my purpose, the thing that gave me meaning when grief threatened to swallow me whole. But what if everything I thought I knew about Daniel was wrong? What if the man I'd loved and mourned and tried to honor had been someone else entirely? "Lately, I wonder if I'm holding on to something that was never really mine to begin with," I said. Lily studied my face with those two old eyes. "Mrs. M, can I tell you something?" I nodded. "When I first came here after my family basically kicked me out, I was terrified. Not just about the baby, but about everything. About being alone, about not knowing how to take care of myself, about whether I was strong enough to handle what was coming." She paused, her fingers tracing patterns on the counter. "But you made me feel like I belonged somewhere, like I mattered to someone. This place, it's not just about coffee or books or whatever Emma thinks. It's about giving people a safe harbor when they don't know where else to go." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Oh, Lily, so maybe it doesn't matter what Mr. Morrison originally wanted, you know. Maybe what matters is what this place means now, to people like me, to Mr. Patterson, to all the book club ladies who come here Thursday nights." She smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the child she still was in so many ways. "Maybe it's your dream now, not his, and maybe that's okay." That evening, after Lily left for her second job waiting tables at Murphy's Diner, and I'd locked up the cafe, I climbed the stairs to my small apartment above the reading corner. The space was modest. A living room that doubled as my office, a tiny kitchen, a bedroom barely large enough for my queen bed, and Daniel's dresser, which I'd never been able to bring myself to empty. I made tea with shaking hands and sat at my kitchen table, the engineering textbook spread before me like evidence in a trial I didn't want to attend. There were more letters hidden between the pages, dozens of them spanning what looked like 2 years before Daniel's death. They painted a picture of a relationship that was passionate, secretive, and apparently very real. "Daniel, I know this is complicated, but what we have is worth fighting for. I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship. When you touch me, when you look at me like I'm the only woman in the world, I feel alive in a way I never have before. My darling, the way you held me last night, so gentle, so careful, as if I were something precious. I know you feel guilty about Kate, about Emma, about the life you built before you met me, but love doesn't ask permission, does it? It just arrives and changes everything. Daniel, I'm pregnant." The last letter was dated 3 months before Daniel's death. My hands trembled as I read words that shattered the final pieces of my world. "I know this changes everything. I know you need time to figure out what this means for us, for your marriage, for the baby. I won't pressure you for a decision. But I need you to know that whatever you choose, I'll always be grateful for what we shared. You showed me what it felt like to be truly loved. All my love. Sophia." I stared at the name written in that careful script. Sophia. Daniel had been having an affair with someone named Sophia, and she'd been pregnant with his child. My phone rang, the sound harsh in the quiet apartment. I glanced at the caller ID with blurred vision, Dr. Patricia Stone, Millbrook General Hospital. My heart hammered as I answered. Hello, Mrs. Morrison. This is Dr. Stone from Millbrook General. I hope I'm not calling too late. No, I swallowed hard. How did you get my number? I've been trying to reach you for several months, actually. After your husband's death, there were some questions about his medical care that I felt you should know about. What questions? A pause. Mrs. Morrison, I think we should meet in person. There are things about Daniel's final months that you deserve to know. Things he asked me not to tell you, but given recent circumstances, I feel an obligation to be honest. What circumstances? There's been some inquiry from the insurance company. They're reviewing the accident report as part of a routine audit. The world tilted sideways. What kind of inquiry? Mrs. Morrison, I really think we should meet. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? There's something I need to show you. Something about your husband's health that might change how you understand what happened that day. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by love letters and shattered assumptions, watching November rain streak down my windows like tears I couldn't shed. Somewhere across town, Dr. Michael Hayes was probably settling into his new home surrounded by his own boxes of memories and regrets. He'd seemed kind, genuinely interested in healing, his own and others. Under different circumstances, I might have found comfort in meeting someone who understood loss. But these weren't different circumstances. These were circumstances that were about to reveal truths I'd spent 5 years avoiding, truths that would force me to confront not just Daniel's death, but the life we'd built together. I thought about Lily's words about dreams changing hands and becoming something new. But what happened when the foundation of those dreams turned out to be built on lies? I looked at the last letter again at Sophia's careful handwriting announcing her pregnancy. The timeline would make her child about 4 years old now. Somewhere out there, Daniel had another child, a child who would never know their father, just like Emma had to grow up with only memories. But Sophia's baby would be different from Emma. Sophia's baby was the product of betrayal, of broken promises, of a love affair that had destroyed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere in the darkness, my carefully constructed world was cracking apart at the seams. The next morning, I woke before dawn with the letters scattered across my bed and the taste of betrayal sharp on my tongue. By the time Lily arrived for her morning shift, I'd cleaned up the evidence of my sleepless night, made fresh coffee, and practiced approximately 20 different ways to pretend everything was normal. None of them worked. Mrs. Empton, Lily said the moment she saw me hanging up her rain jacket on the hook by the door. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. Just thinking about inventory. I lied, focusing intently on arranging pastries that didn't need arranging. We need to make some decisions about the holiday menu. She studied me with those knowing eyes, her dark hair still damp from the rain. For a moment, something flickered across her features, a resemblance I'd never noticed before, or maybe had never wanted to see. Is this about what Emma said yesterday about selling the cafe? Before I could answer, the bell chimed, and Michael stepped inside, bringing the cool November morning air with him. He wore jeans today instead of his formal coat, and somehow that made him seem more approachable, more human. Good morning, he said, offering a smile that seemed genuinely pleased to see me. I hope you don't mind me coming back so soon. I finished those books in one sitting. Find them helpful? I asked, grateful for the distraction from my own spiraling thoughts. More than I expected, though I suspect the real healing happens in community, not isolation. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. There was a weight to his words, an understanding that went beyond academic knowledge. Have you found community here yet? The question slipped out before I could stop it. I'm beginning to. Places like this help. He gestured around the cafe, taking in the morning regulars settling in with their coffee and newspapers. Anna, my wife, she always said that healing happens best in spaces where people feel safe to be vulnerable. Your wife sounds like she was wise. She was a school counselor. Spent 30 years helping kids navigate difficult situations. His smile was sad but genuine. She would have loved this place, the way you've created something that serves both individual and community needs. I felt an unexpected warmth at the compliment, followed immediately by guilt. How could I be responding to this man's kindness when my world was falling apart, when everything I thought I knew about my marriage was based on lies? Mrs. M. Lily appeared beside me, her voice concerned. Your 2:00 appointment called to confirm. Dr. Stone. My stomach clenched. I'd forgotten that Michael was here, that I wasn't alone with my secrets. "Everything all right?" Michael asked, his physician's instincts clearly picking up on my distress. "Just a meeting about some paperwork," I managed. "Nothing important." But Michael's expression suggested he didn't believe me, and I realized I was a terrible liar. Years of marriage to an honest man, or a man I'd thought was honest, had left me unprepared for deception. "Kate," Michael said gently, "forgive me for being presumptuous, but I recognize the signs of someone carrying a heavy burden alone. If you need someone to talk to, or even just someone to sit with you during difficult conversations..." The kindness in his offer nearly undid me. "Thank you," I whispered. I might take you up on that." As the morning progressed, I found myself watching Lily with new eyes. The way she moved the set of her shoulders, the particular way she tilted her head when she was thinking. Was I imagining resemblances to Daniel, or had they always been there, hidden in plain sight? When the lunch rush ended and the cafe settled into its quiet afternoon rhythm, I finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been burning in my chest. "Lily," I said as she wiped down tables, "you never really talk about your family, about your father." She paused, her cloth stilling on the wooden surface. "There's not much to say. He wasn't around when I was growing up." "Not at all. My mom, she said he was a good man who got caught in a complicated situation. She said he would have been a wonderful father if circumstances had been different." Lily's voice was carefully neutral, but I caught the undercurrent of old hurt. "She used to show me pictures of him sometimes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Said I had his eyes." My heart stopped. "Pictures? Yeah, he was handsome. Tall, dark hair, kind eyes. Mom said he was some kind of engineer or construction worker. Built things that lasted." She looked up at me and I saw it then. The shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw. Features I'd loved in Daniel now reflected in this young woman I'd come to care for like a daughter. The cloth fell from my nerveless fingers. "Mrs. M, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way I had. I was looking at Daniel's daughter, the child he'd never acknowledged, never supported, never claimed. The girl who'd been working beside me for months, earning my affection and protection, while I remained completely unaware of the connection between us. "I need some air." I managed, stumbling toward the back door that led to the small courtyard behind the cafe. Outside, I pressed my back against the brick wall and tried to remember how to breathe. The November air was sharp and clean, cutting through the fog of shock that threatened to overwhelm me. Lily was Daniel's daughter. The sweet, brave young woman I'd been mothering and protecting was the living proof of my husband's betrayal. She was carrying Daniel's grandchild, a child who would carry his genes, his legacy, everything that should have been reserved for Emma and whatever family she might someday have. But more than that, Lily was innocent. She was a scared young woman who'd been abandoned by everyone who should have protected her, who'd found refuge in my cafe and my care. She didn't know who her father was, didn't know that she'd been working alongside his widow, accepting kindness from the woman he'd betrayed. What was I supposed to do with this knowledge? How was I supposed to look at her and not see Daniel's betrayal staring back at me? How was I supposed to keep caring for her when every moment in her presence was a reminder of how completely I'd been fooled? The back door opened and Michael appeared, his face creased with concern. "Kate, Lily said you looked upset. She asked me to check on you." Of course she had, because Lily was kind and caring and worried about people, traits she'd probably inherited from Daniel, along with his eyes and his stubborn chin and his ability to keep devastating secrets. "I can't do this," I whispered. "Do what?" "Any of it. The cafe, the pretending, the caring about people who..." I stopped, realizing I couldn't explain without revealing everything. Michael moved closer, his presence calm and steady. "Kate, whatever you're facing, you don't have to face it alone." "You don't understand. Everything I thought I knew, everyone I trusted, it's all been a lie. Tell me." And somehow, standing in that small courtyard with this gentle stranger who'd appeared in my life at exactly the moment I needed him, I found myself wanting to trust again, wanting to believe that not everyone was hiding devastating secrets. "My husband was having an affair," I said quietly. "For years, apparently. And I think Lily might be his daughter." Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, professional. "That's a lot to process. How certain are you?" "The timeline fits. Her description of her father fits. And now that I'm looking for it, I can see Daniel in her features. I laughed bitterly. I've been caring for my husband's illegitimate child for months, and I never knew. Kate, if what you suspect is true, then Lily is as much a victim of Daniel's choices as you are. She didn't know who her father was. She couldn't have known about your connection to him. But I know now, and I don't know how to keep looking at her, keep caring about her when she's living proof of everything Daniel stole from our marriage. Do you want to stop caring about her? The question hit me like a physical blow. No, that's the worst part. I love that girl like she was my own daughter. But how can I love her when she represents the biggest betrayal of my life? Maybe, Michael said gently, the question isn't how you can love her despite who her father was. Maybe the question is whether you can love her because of who she is. Before I could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway, her face creased with worry. Mrs. M, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Stone just called. She's running late and wants to reschedule your appointment for 4 o'clock. She said it was important that you have someone with you, family or a close friend. She looked between Michael and me, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. I can stay, Michael offered quietly, if you'd like the support. I looked at him, this kind stranger who'd somehow become the steady presence I needed to face the unthinkable. Then I looked at Lily, seeing Daniel's eyes in her worried expression, and felt my heart break all over again. Yes, I said finally. I'd like that very much. As we walked back into the cafe, I caught Lily's hand. Mija, I said, using the endearment that had become natural between us. Whatever happens today, whatever I learn about the past, I want you to know that you matter to me, that you have a place here as long as you need it. Her smile was radiant, trusting completely unaware that her world was about to become as complicated as mine. Thank you, Mrs. M. That means everything to me. As I watched her return to her work, humming softly as she restocked the book display, I realized that Dr. Stone's revelations about Daniel's health might be the least of my problems. The real question was what I was going to do about the daughter he'd never claimed, who'd somehow found her way into my heart, just as my world was falling apart. And whether love, the messy, complicated, sometimes inconvenient kind, was strong enough to survive the truth we were all about to face. Part 2, The Weight of Truth. At 3:45 p.m., I stood outside Millbrook General Hospital with Michael beside me, wondering how my life had taken such a surreal turn. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry had been Emma's pressure to sell the cafe. Now I was about to learn truths about my marriage that might destroy everything I thought I knew about the man I'd loved. Are you sure you want me here? Michael asked quietly. I'm still essentially a stranger. Maybe that's exactly what I need right now. Someone with no investment in preserving my illusions. Dr. Patricia Stone's office was on the second floor in the cardiology wing. The elevator ride felt eternal, filled with the antiseptic smell of hospitals and the weight of impending revelation. Dr. Stone was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of competent manner that probably made patients trust her with their lives. She stood when we entered her office, extending her hand with professional warmth. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming. And you are? She looked at Michael with polite inquiry. Dr. Michael Hayes, a friend of Kate's. Dr. Hayes. She paused, something flickering in her expression. Psychiatry by any chance? Yes, though I'm retired now. I thought I recognized the name. Your work on trauma therapy in medical settings was quite influential. I watched this exchange with growing unease. What were the odds that the stranger I'd met yesterday would turn out to be a psychiatrist just like I apparently needed one? Please sit, Dr. Stone said, settling behind her desk. Mrs. Morrison, I want to begin by saying how sorry I am for your loss and how difficult this conversation is going to be. What is it I need to know about Daniel? Dr. Stone opened a thick file folder. Your husband came to me 6 months before his death with severe chest pain. The diagnostic tests showed advanced coronary artery disease, multiple blockages, significant damage to the heart muscle. Without immediate intervention, I estimated he had perhaps 4 to 6 months to live. The room tilted. 6 months. I recommended emergency surgery, triple bypass, possibly valve replacement, aggressive medication management. With treatment, he could have had years of quality life ahead of him. But he had the treatment right. He must have, because he lived for 6 more months. Dr. Stone shook her head slowly. Daniel refused all treatment. He signed papers releasing me from liability, insisted his decision was final, and made me promise not to contact you or anyone in his family about his condition. That's impossible. My voice sounded strange, distant. Daniel wouldn't. He loved us. He wouldn't keep something like that secret. I argued with him extensively about that decision. I told him his family deserved to know, deserved the chance to spend time with him to prepare. But he was adamant. He said he'd rather die on his own terms than become a burden. Michael leaned forward slightly. Dr. Stone, you mentioned questions from the insurance company. Yes. Dr. Stone pulled out another set of papers. The insurance company initially paid out the life insurance policy, $750,000, based on the accidental death ruling. But recently, someone flagged Daniel's medical history for routine review. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. What are you saying? I'm saying that the location of the accident, the circumstances, the fact that Daniel was alone on a construction site he rarely visited. The investigators are questioning whether his death was truly accidental. The words hit me like physical blows. You think Daniel killed himself? I think Daniel was a man facing a terminal diagnosis who may have made a choice about how and when to die. Construction accidents provide plausible cover, and the insurance payout would be substantial. The office went silent, except for the sound of my ragged breathing. Michael's hand found mine, steady and warm, anchoring me to the moment. There's more, Dr. Stone said gently. Daniel asked me to give you something if anyone ever came looking for information about his care. She pulled an envelope from the file, white, with my name written in Daniel's careful engineering script. He left this with me a month before he died. He said if questions were ever raised about his medical treatment, I should give it to you. With shaking hands, I took the envelope. My name stared back at me in the familiar handwriting that had written shopping lists and anniversary cards and bedtime stories for Emma. Kate, Michael said quietly, do you want to read it here, or would you prefer to go somewhere private? I looked at him through eyes blurred with unshed tears. This man who'd appeared in my life just as it was falling apart, who'd somehow become the steady presence I needed to face the unthinkable. Will you stay with me? I whispered. Whatever this says, I don't think I can face it alone. Of course. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope and began to read the letter that would change everything I thought I knew about love loss and the man I'd spent 5 years mourning. My dearest Kate, if you're reading this, it means someone discovered what I tried so hard to hide from you. I know you're angry with me. You have every right to be. I know you feel betrayed, lied to, cheated out of time we could have had together. The truth is, I was a coward. And I was selfish when Dr. Stone showed me those test results when she explained what was happening to my heart. My first thought wasn't about dying. It was about watching you sacrifice your dreams to take care of me. It was about Emma having to watch her father waste away, about turning our home into a medical facility, about the years of suffering that stretched ahead. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear watching you give up everything to nurse a man whose body was betraying him piece by piece. So I made a choice. I chose when and how to leave, rather than letting the disease make that choice for us. But that's not the only secret I kept from you. Kate, and this is the hardest thing I've ever had to write. I had an affair. For 2 years I betrayed our marriage, our vows, everything we built together. Her name is Sophia Reyes, and she's a good woman who deserved better than a married man who couldn't choose between his family and his heart. Sophia was pregnant when I died. She has a daughter now, my daughter. Her name is Lily. I know this is devastating. I know it changes everything you thought you knew about me, about us. But Kate, I need you to understand something. My love for you was never a lie. My commitment to our family was never false. I failed. I failed as a husband, as a man, as someone worthy of your trust. The money from the insurance will be enough to secure your future. Keep the cafe, make it everything you dreamed it could be. And if you can find it in your heart, please don't blame Lily for my mistakes. She's innocent in all of this. I love you. I will always love you. But I love you enough to let you go, to give you the chance to build a life without the shadow of my failures. Your unfaithful but devoted husband, Daniel P.S. I've set up a trust fund for Lily's education. Sophia has the details. She's a good mother, Kate. Better than I ever was a father. The letter fluttered to the floor as my hands went limp. The office around me felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold from a great distance. Kate, Dr. Stone's voice was gentle. I know this is overwhelming. Lily, I whispered. The girl who works for me. Her name is Lily. Michael and Dr. Stone exchanged glances. You know her? Michael asked carefully. She's been working at my cafe for months. She's pregnant. She told me her father wasn't around when she was growing up, that her mother said he was a good man in a complicated situation. I looked up at them both, desperate for someone to make sense of the senseless. She's been right there. Daniel's daughter has been right there, and I never knew. Kate, Michael said gently, this doesn't change who Lily is. It doesn't change the relationship you've built with her. Doesn't it? How can I look at her now and not see Daniel's betrayal? How can I care for her when every moment with her reminds me of how completely he fooled me? Doctor. Stone cleared her throat. Mrs. Morrison, there's something else you should know. The insurance company is prepared to honor the accidental death benefit regardless of the circumstances. The investigators concluded that Daniel's intentions don't affect the validity of the claim. $750,000. Blood money, guilt money, love money. I didn't know what to call it anymore. I need to go home, I said, standing abruptly. Kate, Michael said, rising as well. Let me drive you. You're in shock. I didn't argue. I couldn't. The world felt too unstable for me to trust my own judgment about anything. We drove in silence through Millbrook's tree-lined streets past the elementary school where Daniel had volunteered for career day, past the park where we used to walk Emma when she was little, past all the landmarks of a life I thought I understood. When we pulled up to the cafe, I could see Lily through the front window serving coffee to the after-school crowd with her usual cheerful efficiency. She looked so young, so innocent, so completely unaware that her world was about to become as complicated as mine. Michael, I said as he turned off the engine, what am I supposed to do? How do I face her? One moment at a time, he said simply. You don't have to make any big decisions right now. You just have to get through today. Inside the cafe, Lily looked up from the espresso machine with a bright smile that faltered when she saw my face. Mrs. M, how did your appointment go? I stood there looking into Daniel's eyes and her face and felt my carefully constructed world crumble completely. Lily, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Something in my tone made her step back, suddenly wary. Okay. Your mother's name is Sophia, isn't it? Sophia Reyes? The color drained from Lily's face. How do you know that? And your father. Your mother showed you pictures of him. Tall, dark hair, kind eyes. An engineer or construction worker. Mrs. M, you're scaring me. What's going on? I looked at this girl I'd come to love like a daughter, this innocent young woman who'd somehow stumbled into my life at exactly the moment I needed someone to care for, and realized I had a choice to make. I could tell her the truth, that her father was my husband, that she was the living proof of the greatest betrayal of my life, that every moment of kindness I'd shown her had been built on a lie I didn't even know I was living. Or I could protect her from the devastating knowledge that would destroy her idealized image of the father she'd never known, and find a way to love her despite the pain it caused me. Lily, I said finally, my voice stronger now, sit down. There's something I need to tell you. Michael positioned himself nearby, close enough to offer support, but far enough away to give us privacy. The afternoon customers seemed to sense something significant was happening and found excuses to leave until it was just the three of us in the warm glow of the cafe. Your father, I began, then stopped. How do you tell someone that everything they thought they knew about their parentage was connected to the woman who'd been caring for them? My father is dead, Lily said quietly. Mom told me he died in an accident when I was little. She said he never got to meet me, but he would have loved me. Lily, your father was my husband, Daniel Morrison. He died 5 years ago in a construction accident. The silence that followed was deafening. Lily stared at me with those familiar eyes, Daniel's eyes, as understanding slowly dawned. That's impossible, she whispered. I wish it were, but I have letters, Lily. Letters he wrote to your mother, and a letter he wrote to me explaining everything. You're saying that you're my stepdaughter, and I've been your stepmother for months without either of us knowing it. Lily's hand moved unconsciously to her belly. The baby is Daniel's grandchild, Emma's nephew or niece. Tears started streaming down Lily's face. Mrs. M, I had no idea. I swear I had no idea. If I'd known, I never would have. Lily, stop, I moved closer instinctively, wanting to comfort her despite my own pain. This isn't your fault. You didn't choose any of this. But I've been taking your money, accepting your kindness, living in your space when I'm the reminder of the worst thing that ever happened to your marriage. You're not a reminder of the worst thing, Mija. You're a reminder that sometimes beautiful things can come from complicated situations. Michael cleared his throat gently. Kate, Lily, I don't mean to interrupt, but there's something else you both need to consider. We looked at him. Lily, does your mother know where you're working? Does she know about Kate? No, Lily said slowly. I told her I found a job at a cafe, but I never mentioned the name or the owner. She's been in Mexico caring for my grandmother. We mostly text. And Kate, according to Daniel's letter, Sophia knows about the trust fund. She may be expecting to hear from the lawyers about Lily's education. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. Sophia's going to find out that her daughter has been working for Daniel's wife. It gets more complicated, Michael said gently. Lily, when is your baby due? March, she said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. And you're not in contact with the father. He wanted nothing to do with us when I told him about the pregnancy. Said it would ruin his college plans. I saw where Michael was going with this. Sophia's going to want to be involved in her grandchild's life. She's going to want Lily to come home. But Mexico is home, Lily said quietly. I mean, it was. Until I came here. Until you... She looked at me with such vulnerability that my heart ached. Mrs. M, this place working with you, it's the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. Lily, I know this is weird and complicated and probably impossible, but I don't want to leave. I don't want to go back to Mexico and pretend this never happened. You've been more of a parent to me in these few months than anyone has in my whole life. The raw honesty in her voice broke something open in my chest. Oh, Mija, I know I don't have the right to ask, not after everything we just learned, but please don't make me go. Please don't send me away because of what my father did. I looked at this young woman, Daniel's daughter, my stepdaughter, the girl who'd somehow found her way into my heart, despite the circumstances that should have kept us apart, and realized that Michael had been right earlier. The question wasn't how I could love her despite who her father was. The question was whether I was brave enough to love her because of who she was. Lily, I said, taking her hands in mine, you're not going anywhere unless you want to go. This is your home now for as long as you need it to be. But what about Sophia? What about Emma? What about everyone who's going to think this is crazy? Then we'll face it together, I said, surprising myself with my certainty. All of it. The complicated family dynamics, the gossip, the questions. We'll face it as a family, even though I'm proof that your husband betrayed you. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about Daniel's letter, about the affair that had created this precious girl, about the ways love could be both destructive and redemptive. Lily, I said finally, you're not proof of betrayal. You're proof that even our worst mistakes can create something beautiful. You're proof that families don't have to be built on blood. They can be built on choice. That evening, after Lily had gone home to process everything we'd discussed, and Michael had helped me close up the cafe, we sat in my apartment sharing takeout Chinese food and trying to make sense of the day's revelations. Are you all right? He asked, watching me push lo mein around my plate without eating. I don't think I'll be all right for a while, but I'm not falling apart if that's what you're worried about. What will you do now about Lily, about Sophia, about the insurance money? I set down my chopsticks, considering. Keep Lily with me if that's what she wants. Use some of the insurance money to expand the cafe, create a space that can support her and the baby. Maybe start a program for young mothers who need job training. And Sophia. I'll call her. Tonight, probably. She deserves to know what's happened, and Lily deserves to have both her mothers in her life, if that's possible. Michael smiled softly. Both her mothers. It sounds crazy when you say it out loud. It sounds like love. Complicated, messy, unconventional love, but love nonetheless. I studied his face in the lamplight, seeing the kindness that had drawn me to him from the beginning. Michael, can I ask you something personal? Of course. When you lost Anna, did you ever think you'd be able to care about someone again? Honestly, no. I thought that part of my life was over. He reached across the table to cover my hand with his. But then I met someone who reminded me that hearts can be broken and still function, that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. Is that what this is between us? I think it could be if we're both brave enough to let it develop. The simple honesty of his answer made something tight in my chest loosen slightly. I'm scared, Michael. Not just of caring about you, but of everything. Of being responsible for Lily and her baby. Of facing Sophia. Of explaining all this to Emma. When do you talk to Emma? Soon. She deserves to know she has a sister before she finds out some other way. As if summoned by my words, my phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the caller ID. Speak of the devil, I muttered, then answered. Hi, sweetheart. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday and I want to apologize. I was pushy and insensitive about the cafe situation. I looked at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. Emma, actually, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. What's wrong? You sound strange. Can you come home this weekend? Not for a quick visit, but for a real conversation. There are some things about your father that you need to know. A pause. What kind of things? The kind that are better discussed in person. Please, Em. It's important. Okay, I'll catch a flight Friday evening. Mom, you're scaring me. I don't mean to scare you. It's just complicated. And I love you. I love you too. After I hung up, Michael squeezed my hand gently. That was brave. That was terrifying. Emma's going to have so many questions. And you'll answer them one at a time the same way you handled Lily today. I thought about that, about how I'd managed to find words for an impossible situation, how I'd somehow navigated from shock to acceptance to determination in the space of a few hours. Michael, there's something else I need to tell you. About my past, about why I left law. He waited patient and attentive. I used to be a defense attorney. Corporate work mostly, but I took on some criminal cases. There was one case about 7 years ago before I met Daniel, a domestic violence case where I was defending the abuser. Michael's expression didn't change, but I saw him processing this information. I got him acquitted. Completely off. I was thorough, aggressive, brilliant. I destroyed the victim's credibility, poked holes in the prosecution's timeline, created reasonable doubt where there shouldn't have been any. What happened? 3 months later, he killed her, beat her to death in their apartment while their children were asleep in the next room. The words came out flat, emotionless. The newspapers called it a tragic escalation of domestic violence. But I knew the truth. I had put him back on the streets to finish what he started. Kate, I quit law the day I read about her death. I couldn't live with the knowledge that my skills, my dedication to justice, had enabled murder. Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. You couldn't have known what he would do. Couldn't I? The pattern was clear. The escalation was predictable. I just chose not to see it because my job was to defend him, not protect her. And that's why you opened the cafe, why you help people like Lily. I thought if I could create something that brought people together, that supported the vulnerable instead of exploiting them, maybe I could balance the scales somehow. Michael reached across the table and took both my hands in his. Kate, can I tell you something about Anna? I nodded. She spent 30 years as a school counselor helping kids navigate impossible situations. But there was one student she couldn't save, a girl who was being abused at home. Anna reported it followed all the protocols, did everything by the book. But the system failed and the girl ended up taking her own life. Michael, Anna carried that guilt for the rest of her life. She never stopped believing she should have done more, should have seen the signs earlier, should have broken protocol to save that child. It ate at her, even as she helped hundreds of other students over the years. What's your point? My point is that good people sometimes make choices that lead to terrible outcomes. That doesn't make them responsible for other people's evil. It just makes them human. I felt tears start to fall. Not the shocked tears of earlier, but something deeper. The kind of crying that comes when someone finally sees you clearly and doesn't turn away. How do you do it? I whispered. How do you carry that kind of guilt and still function? You find ways to honor the people you couldn't save by helping the ones you can. You build something beautiful from the ashes of your mistakes. You learn that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing to do better going forward. We sat in silence for a while, holding hands across my small kitchen table, while the weight of shared understanding settled between us. Michael, I said eventually, I need you to know something. When I first met you, I thought you were too good to be true. I thought there had to be some secret, some flaw, some reason you couldn't be as kind and genuine as you seemed. And now, Now I know you are too good to be true, and that's exactly what makes you real. You're not perfect. You're just someone who's learned to carry imperfection with grace." He smiled, and in that smile I saw the possibility of something I hadn't dared to hope for, a future built on honesty instead of illusion, on chosen love instead of circumstance. "Kate, would you like me to be here when you call Sophia?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I think I'm going to need all the support I can get." As I dialed the international number Daniel had included with Sophia's letters, I thought about how much my life had changed in just 2 days. I discovered that my marriage was built on lies, that my husband had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, that the girl I'd been caring for was the living proof of that betrayal. But I'd also discovered that love, real love, didn't require perfection. It just required courage. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered in accented English. "Hello, Sophia, this is Kate Morrison, Daniel's wife. I think we need to talk." Part 3. The Choice of Love. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the connection had been lost. When Sophia finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Kate, I wondered if this day would ever come. You knew who I was. I knew of you. Daniel spoke of you often. He loved you very much, even when he was with me." The words should have stung, but somehow they didn't. Maybe I was beyond being hurt by Daniel's contradictions, or maybe Sophia's obvious pain made her more ally than enemy. "Sophia, I need you to know that I just found out about the affair today. About you, about Lily, about all of it." "Lily," her voice sharpened with alarm. "What about my daughter?" Michael squeezed my hand, reminding me to breathe, to take this slowly. "She's here, Sophia. She's been working for me for months. We both just found out about the connection." "That's impossible. Lily is in Connecticut working at some cafe. She doesn't know anything about Daniel or—" Sophia's voice cut off as understanding dawned. "Oh, Dios mío. Your cafe. My cafe. She's been with you this whole time my daughter has been with Daniel's wife. She's been with her stepmother, though neither of us knew it." Another long silence. When Sophia spoke again, she was crying. Is she all right? Is she happy?" I thought about Lily's bright smile, her dedication to her work, the way she'd blossomed with steady support and encouragement. "She's wonderful, Sophia. She's smart and kind and hardworking. She's pregnant and she's scared, but she's handling it with more grace than most adults would manage." "Pregnant?" Sophia's voice rose. "She didn't tell me she was pregnant. She was afraid you'd be disappointed. The father abandoned her when he found out. I need to come there. I need to see her to bring her home." This was the moment I'd been dreading. Sophia, Lily is an adult. She gets to choose where she wants to be. She's my daughter. She's also Daniel's daughter, and she's chosen to stay with me. You can't keep her from me. I'm not trying to keep her from you. I'm trying to respect her choices." Michael gestured for the phone, and I handed it to him gratefully. "Sophia, this is Dr. Michael Hayes. I'm a friend of Kate's." His voice carried the calm authority of years in crisis counseling. "I think we need to step back and focus on what's best for Lily, not what's most comfortable for the adults." I could hear Sophia breathing heavily on the other end. "What's best for Lily is being with her family," Sophia said. "And she is with family," Michael replied gently. "She's with Kate, who has been caring for her like a daughter. She's building a life there, preparing for her own child. Sometimes the families we choose are as important as the ones we're born into." "You don't understand. Kate is a stranger. Kate is Lily's stepmother. That makes her family, too." When I took the phone back, Sophia was quiet. "Sophia," I said, "I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" "Come here, meet me. See how Lily is doing, how she's thriving. If you decide you want to take her back to Mexico, I won't fight you. But if you see that she's happy here, that she's building something good, maybe we can figure out a way for her to have both her mothers in her life. Both her mothers, you gave birth to her. You raised her. You'll always be her mother. But I've been mothering her too, and I love her like she was my own. Maybe that's not a competition. Maybe that's just more love for her to draw on." Sophia was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally she spoke. "I can be there by Sunday." "Good. Sophia." "Yes. Daniel set up a trust fund for Lily's education. I have the details if you want them. He did that. He did a lot of things wrong, but he tried to take care of his daughter. After we hung up, Michael and I sat in the kitchen while I tried to process what I'd just committed to. A weekend to convince Sophia that her daughter belongs with me, I said. What have I gotten myself into? You've gotten yourself into a fight for someone you love. That's not a bad place to be. What if she takes Lily away? Then you'll have given Lily a few months of feeling truly cared for, and that's not nothing. The next morning brought Emma's early flight and a cafe full of regulars who seemed to sense that something significant was happening in my life. Mrs. Patterson lingered over her coffee, clearly fishing for gossip. Tom from the hardware store made 3 separate trips for pastries he didn't need. Even Dr. Hernandez stopped by ostensibly to grab a quick lunch, but actually to study me with the sharp attention of someone who'd spent decades diagnosing problems. Lily worked with her usual efficiency, but I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. The knowledge of our connection seemed to have settled into her bones overnight. She moved around the cafe with a new sense of ownership, straightening things that didn't need straightening, humming under her breath, in a way that reminded me heartbreakingly of Daniel. Mrs. M., she said during the afternoon lull, I called my mom last night. My stomach clenched. What did you tell her? The truth. About working here, about you, about finding out who my father was. She cried for about an hour. I can imagine. How do you feel about her coming this weekend? Lily settled her hands on her growing belly, a gesture that was becoming habitual. Scared, excited, worried she'll try to make me choose between her and you. If she does, then I'll tell her what I told you yesterday. This is my home now. You're my family now. The baby and I, we belong here. The fierce certainty in her voice made my chest tight with pride and terror in equal measure. Lily, you know I love you like a daughter. But Sophia is your mother. She raised you, sacrificed for you, loves you in ways I'm just beginning to understand. If she needs you to come home with her, I want you to really consider it. Why, so you can feel noble about letting me go? The question was so direct, so perceptive that I actually laughed. Maybe partly, but mostly because I want you to make choices based on what you need, not on gratitude or loyalty to me. What if what I need is to stay with the person who sees me as capable instead of someone who needs to be rescued? Before I could respond, the bell above the door chimed, and Emma walked in carrying her overnight bag and wearing an expression I recognized from her teenage years, the look she got when she was bracing herself for bad news. Mom, she crossed the cafe quickly and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than usual. You sounded so strange on the phone. What's going on? I looked around the cafe, noting the customers who were clearly eavesdropping, and made a decision. Lily, can you handle things here for an hour? I need to talk to Emma upstairs. Of course, Mrs. M. As we climbed the stairs to my apartment, Emma studied Lily with new attention. She's pretty. How long has she been working for you? About 4 months. She seems, I don't know, comfortable here. Like she belongs. Emma had no idea how accurate that observation was. In my kitchen, I made tea with shaking hands while Emma settled at the table where I'd read Daniel's letters just 24 hours earlier. It felt like a lifetime ago. Em, I said, setting the tea in front of her, what I'm about to tell you is going to be shocking. It's going to change how you see your father, how you understand our marriage, maybe how you understand your whole childhood. Her face went very still. Is Dad sick? Did he not actually die in the accident? Dad is dead, but he didn't die the way we thought he did. I told her everything. About Daniel's heart condition, about his refusal to seek treatment, about the possibility that his death hadn't been accidental. I showed her his letter, watched her face change as she read about the affair, about Sophia, about the daughter he'd never acknowledged. When I got to the part about Lily being her half-sister, Emma set down her tea with hands that weren't quite steady. Lily, the pregnant girl downstairs. She's Dad's daughter. Yes. She's been working for you for months and neither of you knew. Neither of us had any idea. Emma was quiet for a long time, processing information that would have sent me into a complete breakdown just days ago. How are you handling this? She asked finally. Some days better than others. Today has been a good day. And you're keeping her, Lily, I mean. You're letting her stay. I'm not letting her do anything. She's an adult who gets to make her own choices. But yes, I'm supporting her choice to stay. Emma studied my face with the analytical intensity she brought to her architectural projects. You love her. It wasn't a question. I do. I love her like I love you. Fiercely, protectively, unconditionally. even though she represents the worst betrayal of your marriage. Because she represents the possibility that something beautiful can come from even our worst mistakes. Emma stood and walked to the window that overlooked Main Street, where late afternoon shoppers were heading home from work. I always wondered, she said quietly, why Dad seemed so sad sometimes, especially toward the end. He'd get this look, guilty and distant and like he was carrying something heavy. I thought it was work stress or maybe worry about you and the cafe dreams. You noticed that? I noticed everything about Dad. He was my hero. She turned back to me, tears tracking down her cheek. He was my hero. She turned back to me, tears tracking down her cheeks. And now I find out he was human, flawed, capable of hurting the people he loved most. Does that change how you feel about him? Emma considered this her expression thoughtful rather than devastated. It makes me sad for him, and for you, and angry that he put you in this position. She paused. But it also makes me proud of you. Proud of me? Mom, you found out that Dad betrayed you in the worst possible way, and your response was to love his daughter, to create a family out of the wreckage of his lies. That's not just forgiveness. That's transformation. The simple statement hit me like a revelation. I hadn't thought of it as transformation, just as survival. But maybe Emma was right. Maybe choosing love over bitterness was a kind of alchemy. There's something else, I said. Sophia, Lily's mother, is coming this weekend. She wants to take Lily back to Mexico. And you're going to fight for her. If she wants me to. Emma came back to the table and took my hands in hers. Mom, I owe you an apology. For what? For pushing you to sell the cafe to move on to stop living in the past. I thought you were stuck, unable to accept Dad's death and build something new. But you weren't stuck. You were building. You were creating exactly the kind of space Dad would have been proud of, and you were becoming exactly the kind of person who could handle something like this with grace. I don't feel graceful. I feel like I'm making it up as I go along. That's what grace looks like, Mom. It's not having all the answers. It's choosing love, even when you don't know how it's going to work out. That evening, the three of us sat in the cafe after closing. 3 generations of women bound together by Daniel's choices and our own. Emma had spent an hour talking with Lily, getting to know the half-sister she'd never known existed, and I watched them discover the easy rapport that sometimes happens between people who share more than just genes. So Emma said, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee, Mom tells me you're planning to stay here, even if your mother wants you to come back to Mexico. Lily nodded, her hand resting on her belly. This is home now. Mrs. M, Kate, she's given me something I never had before. What's that? The feeling that I can handle whatever comes next, that I'm strong enough to be a good mother to build a good life. Your mom, she doesn't try to fix me or rescue me. She just believes in me. Emma looked at me with something like wonder. She's good for you too, isn't she? Taking care of her. It's been the most rewarding thing I've done since your father died, I admitted. Maybe the most rewarding thing I've ever done, period. And now Sophia wants to take her away. Sophia wants what's best for her daughter. I can't fault her for that. Emma was quiet for a moment, then grinned with sudden mischief. Well then, we'll just have to show Sophia what's best for Lily, won't we? We? You don't think I'm going to miss meeting my nephew or niece's grandmother, do you? Besides, I have some vacation time saved up, and I suspect you could use all the support you can get. Looking at my daughters, one by birth, one by choice, both by love, I felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't experienced in years. Not just contentment, but rightness. The sense that despite all the pain and deception that had brought us to this moment, we were exactly where we were supposed to be. There's one more thing, I said. Michael, Dr. Hayes, he's been helping me through all of this. I think I'm falling in love with him. Emma raised an eyebrow. The silver-haired man who was here earlier, the one who looked at you like you were the most fascinating woman he'd ever met. You noticed that? I notice everything, Mom. Just like I noticed that you smiled more in the past hour than you have in the past 5 years. Lily grinned. Dr. Hayes is wonderful. He helped Kate through the hardest day of her life yesterday, and he never once made her feel like she had to be anything other than exactly who she is. Sounds like a keeper, Emma said. Are you going to introduce him to Sophia? The thought made me laugh, despite everything. I hadn't planned on it, but at this point, why not? Let's just pile all the complications into one weekend and see what happens. Saturday dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of November weather that made you want to stay inside with hot coffee and good books. I was arranging the weekend's featured titles when Michael appeared with pastries from the bakery and the kind of smile that made me remember what it felt like to be cherished. "Thought you might need sustenance before the big meeting," he said, setting a box of Danish and croissants on the counter. "Sophia's flight doesn't get in until 3. I wasn't talking about Sophia. I was talking about the conversation we're about to have." Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. "What conversation?" "The one where I tell you something about my past that's going to complicate things between us." My stomach clenched. Not now. Not when I was finally feeling like I could handle the complexities already on my plate. "Michael, if this is about Anna or about your medical practice or about why you really moved to Millbrook, I don't think I can process another revelation right now. It's about Daniel." The world stopped. "What about Daniel?" Michael ran a hand through his silver hair. The gesture I'd learned meant he was working up courage for something difficult. "Kate, I didn't just move to Millbrook for a fresh start. I moved here because I'd heard about Daniel's accident, about the young widow who was trying to keep her cafe afloat, about the questions surrounding his death. You knew about Daniel before you met me. I knew of him. We'd never met, but our paths crossed professionally about 3 years before he died." "How?" "I was consulting on a case. A custody dispute where one parent was claiming psychological abuse by the other. Daniel was called as a character witness for the father. My mind raced trying to understand the implications. And the father won custody. 2 months later, he killed both children and himself. The pastries on the counter blurred as tears filled my eyes. "Michael, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that Daniel's testimony was compelling, passionate, and completely wrong. He vouched for a man who turned out to be a monster, and 2 innocent children died because of it. You blame Daniel for their deaths." "I blamed everyone involved, including myself. I reviewed that case 100 times, trying to understand how we all missed the signs, how a good man like Daniel could be so completely deceived by someone who seemed trustworthy. And you came here to what? Confront me about it. Punish Daniel's widow. I came here to understand how someone I'd researched, someone who seemed genuinely decent, could make such a catastrophic error in judgment. I wanted to know if he was naive, willfully blind, or just unlucky." "And what did you conclude?" Michael moved closer, his expression gentle but serious. "I concluded that Daniel Morrison was a man capable of profound self-deception. Someone who could convince himself that destructive people were redeemable, that his judgment was better than the evidence that wanting something to be true could make it true." The words hit me like physical blows. "You're saying he was a fool. I'm saying he was human. And I'm saying that his ability to deceive himself about other people's character probably extended to his ability to deceive himself about his own choices. The affair. The hidden illness, the way he died. All of it fits a pattern of someone who couldn't face difficult truths, who preferred comfortable lies to painful realities." I sank into one of the cafe chairs, feeling like everything solid in my world was dissolving again. "So you studied me like a case study. You befriended me to understand my dead husband." "That's how it started," Michael admitted. "But Kate, what I found was nothing like what I expected. Instead of a naive woman mourning a flawed man, I found someone who was building something beautiful out of loss. Someone who was choosing to help people instead of blaming them. Someone who was transforming grief into grace." "And you fell in love with your research subject." "I fell in love with a woman who reminded me that healing is possible, that people can choose to become better than their worst experiences. I fell in love with someone who looked at a scared pregnant girl and saw potential instead of problems." I looked at him through tears, seeing the lines of guilt and regret that I'd mistaken for simple grief. "You've been carrying this secret the whole time we've been getting to know each other." "Yes, and I know that probably destroys any trust between us. I know that my reasons for being here make everything I've said and done seem calculated." Does it make it calculated?" Michael was quiet for a moment. "Not for me. For me, every moment with you has been real. Every feeling, every conversation, every choice to support you instead of judging you, that's all been genuine. But it started as a lie. It started as research. It became love. I sat in the gray morning light of my cafe, looking at this man who had appeared in my life like a gift and turned out to be another complication, and tried to figure out how I felt. Angry, yes. Hurt that he'd deceived me, absolutely. But underneath those feelings was something else, a strange kind of relief. "Michael," I said finally, "do you know what the worst part of Daniel's betrayal was? Tell me." It wasn't the affair or even the lies about his health. It was the feeling that I'd been completely wrong about someone I loved, that my judgment was so flawed I couldn't trust it about anything. And now I find out that you're also not who I thought you were. But the difference is you're telling me. You're choosing honesty over comfort, truth over whatever fantasy I might prefer. Michael's expression was cautiously hopeful. Does that matter? It matters more than you know. I stood and moved toward him, close enough to see the regret in his eyes, the fear that he'd destroyed something precious before it had a chance to grow. "Michael, I can forgive you for studying me. I can even forgive you for the initial deception. What I can't forgive is if you let guilt about the past prevent us from building something real in the present. Kate, do you love me, the real me, not some idealized version you created in your mind? I love the woman who chose to mother her husband's illegitimate daughter. I love the woman who built a community space out of her own need for healing. I love the woman who faces impossible situations with courage instead of bitterness. Then love me enough to stay. Love me enough to help me figure out how to be a family with Lily and Emma and maybe even Sophia. Love me enough to believe that second chances are possible, even when they're complicated." He kissed me then, soft and sure and full of promise, while November rain streaked the windows and the cafe settled into its weekend quiet around us. "Kate," he said against my lips, "are you sure about this? About us, about all of it?" "I'm not sure about anything," I admitted. "But I'm sure that love is worth the risk. Even complicated, messy, imperfect love. Even when it means choosing trust over safety. Especially then." At 3:15, I stood in the arrivals area of Bradley International Airport, holding a sign with Sophia Reyes written in my careful script, flanked by Emma, Lily, and Michael. We made an unlikely welcoming committee. The betrayed wife, the loyal daughter, the secret daughter, and the man who'd studied us all like specimens before deciding to love us anyway. Sophia emerged from the gate looking exactly like an older version of Lily, petite and dark-haired with the same careful grace and expressive eyes. She wore a simple black dress and carried herself with the dignity of someone who'd faced difficult circumstances without letting them break her. When she saw Lily, her composure cracked. "Mija," she whispered, dropping her bag and pulling her daughter into her arms. "My beautiful girl." They held each other in the middle of the busy airport, crying and laughing and speaking rapid Spanish that I didn't understand but didn't need to. The love between them was obvious, uncomplicated, fierce. It was also exactly what I'd been afraid of. Watching Sophia with Lily, seeing the easy intimacy between them, I realized how foolish I'd been to think a few months of care could compete with 20 years of motherhood. Sophia had raised this girl, sacrificed for her, loved her through all the stages of childhood and adolescence that I'd missed entirely. What right did I have to ask Lily to stay with me? "Mrs. Morrison?" Sophia approached me hesitantly, her English accented but clear. "I am Sophia. Thank you for caring for my daughter. Thank you for raising such an amazing young woman." We stood there for a moment, two women bound together by our love for the same girl, trying to figure out how to navigate an impossible situation. "Perhaps we could talk," Sophia said. "Privately before we go to your home." I looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly, and at Michael, who squeezed my hand. "Of course. There's a coffee shop upstairs." In the bustling airport cafe, Sophia and I sat across from each other like negotiators preparing for a difficult treaty. She ordered café con leche and studied me with the sharp attention of someone sizing up potential competition. "Lily tells me you have been very kind to her," she said finally. "Lily has been a gift to my life. I love her very much. Even knowing who her father was, even knowing what that means about your marriage." The direct question surprised me with its honesty. Because of who she is not, despite who her father was. Sophia stirred sugar into her coffee, considering this. "She also tells me she wants to stay with you, that she considers your cafe her home now. What do you think about that? I think my daughter has always been drawn to people who see her potential rather than her problems. Even as a little girl, she would attach herself to teachers, neighbors, anyone who believed she was capable of more than her circumstances suggested. Is that what you think I'm doing? Seeing potential. I think you are giving her something I never could. The feeling that she can succeed in America, that she can build a life here that's bigger than the one she left behind in Mexico. I waited for her to continue. But I also think you cannot give her something only I can provide. The knowledge of where she comes from, who her people are, what it means to be a Reyes woman. I would never try to replace that, Sophia. I would never try to replace you. No. Then what exactly are you trying to do? The challenge in her voice was clear. I took a breath, trying to find words for something I barely understood myself. I'm trying to love her. Not possess her, not replace anyone in her life, just love her. Give her a safe place to figure out who she wants to become. Support her choices, whatever they are. And if her choice is to come home with me, the question I'd been dreading, then I'll be heartbroken, but I'll support that too. Sophia leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. You mean that? I do. Even though losing her would hurt you, especially because losing her would hurt me. That's what love means. Wanting what's best for someone even when it costs you something. We sat in silence for a moment, two mothers trying to figure out how to share a daughter neither of us wanted to lose. Kate, Sophia said finally, may I tell you something about Daniel? My stomach clenched, but I nodded. He was not a bad man. Confused, yes. Unable to choose between two lives he wanted, yes, but not bad. That's generous of you? I loved him. Not the way you loved him. You had history, stability, a real marriage. I loved the man he was when he was with me. The man who felt young again, who talked about possibilities instead of responsibilities. Did you know about his heart condition? Not until the end. He told me about the diagnosis 2 weeks before he died. He said he was going to tell you that he was going to ask for a divorce so we could be together for whatever time he had left. My breath caught. He was going to leave me. He was going to try. But then he realized he couldn't do it. Couldn't destroy your life for a few months of happiness with me. So he chose to die instead. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. You think he killed himself? I think he chose the time and manner of his death rather than letting the disease choose for him. And I think he did it believing it was the most loving thing he could do for all of us. And was it? Sophia was quiet for a long time. I don't know, but I know that his choice gave you the insurance money to build your cafe. It gave me the memory of a love affair instead of the reality of watching him die slowly. And it gave Lily the possibility of having 2 mothers instead of 1. 2 mothers? If you're willing, if she chooses it. I stared at her, this woman who'd loved my husband, who'd borne his child, who was now offering to share that child with me. What are you saying, Sophia? I'm saying that maybe Lily doesn't have to choose. Maybe she can spend summers in Mexico learning about her heritage and the rest of the year here building her American dream. Maybe she can have a mother who knows where she came from, and a mother who believes in where she's going. You'd be willing to do that. I'd be willing to try. For Lily's sake and for her baby's sake. And maybe for ours, too. Ours. We're connected now, Kate. Through Lily, through Daniel's choices, through the grandchild we'll both love. We can be enemies, or we can figure out how to be family. Family. Complicated, unconventional, probably difficult family, but family nonetheless. I looked at this woman across the cafe table, this woman who could have been my rival, my enemy, the source of ongoing pain, and saw instead someone who'd been hurt by the same man's inability to choose someone who loved the same girl I loved, someone who was offering to build something new from the wreckage of Daniel's deception. Sophia, I said, would you like to come see the cafe? See where Lily's been working, where she wants to raise her baby? I would like that very much. That evening, all of us gathered in my small apartment above the cafe. 5 adults and 1 unborn baby connected by love and loss and the complicated web of Daniel's choices. Emma had cooked dinner with Lily's help, Michael had provided wine, and Sophia had brought photos of Lily's childhood that had us all crying and laughing in equal measure. Look at this one, Sophia said, passing around a picture of a gap-toothed Lily in a school uniform. Her teacher said she was the most determined 6-year-old she'd ever met. When Lily decided she wanted something, nothing could stop her. She's still like that, Emma said, grinning at her half-sister. Yesterday, she reorganized Mom's entire filing system because it was inefficient. It was inefficient, Lily protested, laughing. Everything was filed by date instead of category. It made no sense. She gets that from Daniel, I said without thinking, then caught myself. I mean, she gets the organizational mind from her father. It's okay to talk about him, Sophia said gently. He was part of all our lives, good and bad. What was he like? Emma asked Sophia. I mean, I knew him as Dad, but what was he like with you? Sophia considered the question carefully. He was lighter with me, less burdened. He laughed more, dreamed bigger, but also more conflicted. He carried guilt about loving me, about wanting a life he couldn't have. Do you think he loved Mom? Lily asked quietly. Both Sophia and I spoke at the same time. Yes. Different kinds of love, I continued. He loved me like home, comfortable, steady, built over years. He loved your mother like possibility, exciting, passionate, full of potential. And both were real, Sophia added. That was his tragedy and ours. That love doesn't always choose wisely, and wanting two things doesn't make it possible to have them both. Michael had been quiet through most of the evening, but now he leaned forward slightly. Can I share something my wife Anna used to say? We nodded. She worked with a lot of children from complicated families, divorced parents, step-parents, multiple households, and she always told them that love isn't pie. What does that mean? Emma asked. It means love doesn't get smaller when it's divided. When parents split up and remarry, when new siblings appear, when families become complicated, there isn't less love to go around. There's just more people to love. He looked around the table at all of us. What I see here isn't a broken family trying to piece itself together. I see a family that's bigger and more complicated than anyone expected, but no less real because of it. Even though it started with betrayal and lies, I asked. Especially because it started with betrayal and lies. If you can build something beautiful from something that ugly, imagine what you can build going forward with honesty and intention. Later that night, after Emma had gone to her hotel and Sophia had settled into the guest room, I sat in my kitchen with Michael and tried to process everything that had happened. She's staying, I said wonderingly. Lily's staying, and Sophia's going back to Mexico with plans to visit every few months. We're actually going to try to make this crazy arrangement work. Are you happy about that? I'm terrified about that. But yes, I'm happy too. Michael reached across the table to take my hand. Kate, there's something I need to ask you. Another revelation. I don't think I can handle any more surprises today. Not a revelation. A question about the future. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. He was nervous, I realized. Actually nervous. What kind of question? The kind where I tell you that I love you, that I love the family you're building, and that I'd like to be part of it if you'll have me. Michael, I'm not proposing. Not yet. But I'm asking if you can imagine a future where we're together, where I help you run the cafe, help you raise Lily's baby, help you navigate the complications of having Sophia as an extended family member. You want to help me raise my husband's grandchild. I want to help you love the people you've chosen to love, whether that's Lily or her baby or Sophia or Emma or anyone else who needs what you have to offer. I looked at him across my small kitchen table, this man who'd appeared in my life as a researcher and stayed as a partner who'd offered support without judgment, who'd helped me see that redemption was possible even in impossible circumstances. Yes, I said simply. Yes. Yes, I can imagine a future with you. Yes, I want you to be part of this complicated, beautiful, slightly insane family we're creating. Yes, I love you enough to believe that we can make it work. His smile was brilliant, transformative. Even though nothing about this situation is normal or conventional, or what anyone would recommend, especially because of that. He kissed me, then long and sweet and full of promise, while upstairs Sophia slept in my guest room, and across town, Emma dreamed of meeting her nephew or niece, and in her small apartment, Lily planned for a future that would include 2 mothers, an older sister, a stepfather, and all the love they could give her. 6 months later, on a perfect May morning, when the gardens Michael had helped me plant behind the cafe were blooming with promise, I stood in the children's section watching Lily read to a circle of preschoolers, while her 3-month-old son slept peacefully in his carrier beside her. Sophia had been back twice since her November visit, each trip easier than the last. She and I had developed an unexpected friendship built on our shared love for Lily and our shared understanding of what it meant to be disappointed by someone you loved and choose to love them anyway. Emma visited monthly now, bringing architectural drawings for the cafe expansion and stories about the man she'd been dating. Someone kind and steady who made her laugh and didn't seem intimidated by her complicated family. Michael had moved in above the cafe with me, his presence turning my solitary space into something warm and shared. He'd started a grief support group that met in our community room, and his gentle wisdom had helped dozens of people navigate their own complicated losses. The insurance money had funded not just the cafe expansion, but a scholarship program for young mothers and a community child care center. Daniel's betrayal had been transformed into something that served the community he'd loved, that supported the vulnerable people he'd cared about. But the most beautiful transformation was Lily herself. Motherhood had brought out a strength and grace I'd always seen in her, but that she was finally seeing in herself. She was finishing her degree through online classes, planning to become a teacher, raising her son with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved and supported. "Mrs. M," she said after story time ended and the children had scattered to other activities, "can I ask you something?" "Always, mija. Do you think my father would be proud of how this all turned out?" I looked around the bustling cafe at the families enjoying lunch together, at the teenagers studying for exams, at the elderly regulars who'd made this space part of their daily routine. I thought about Daniel's letter about his hope that I'd find happiness, about his love for community and connection. "I think he'd be amazed," I said honestly. "I think he'd be proud of you, proud of what we've built here, proud that his mistakes somehow led to something beautiful." "Do you forgive him?" "Really?" "I'm learning that forgiveness isn't a destination, it's a practice. Some days I'm angry about the time we lost, the lies he told, the pain he caused. Other days I'm grateful that his choices brought you into my life, that his love for Sophia created the daughter I never knew I needed. And today," I looked at my daughter, not by birth but by choice, by love, by the mysterious alchemy that turns strangers into family, and felt the deep contentment of someone who'd learned that the best stories are the ones that grow from the worst beginnings. Today, I'm grateful. For you, for Sophia, for Emma, for Michael, for all of it. Even the painful parts, because they led us here. As the afternoon sun streamed through the cafe windows and customers settled in with their books and coffee, I realized that Daniel had been right about one thing in his final letter. Some stories don't end with loss. They just turn the page to new chapters. And sometimes, if you're very brave and very lucky, those new chapters are more beautiful than anything you could have written on your own. The bell above the front door chimed as a young couple entered, looking around nervously, like people seeking something they weren't sure they'd find. I watched Lily approach them with her warm smile, saw Michael look up from his book and nod in welcome, noticed Emma wave from where she was reviewing expansion plans at her favorite corner table. This was how healing happened, I realized. Not in grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but in daily choices to remain open, to keep loving, to believe that beautiful things could grow from broken ground. In small moments and large hearts. In cafe conversations and shared meals. In the decision to call complicated people family and to build something lasting from the ashes of what came before. And in the faith that love, messy, imperfect, sometimes inconvenient love, was always worth the risk. The end. Thank you so much for joining Kate on this incredible journey of heartbreak, healing, and hope. If this story touched your heart, you're not alone. Thousands of viewers have shared how Kate's courage to love again inspired them to open their hearts after betrayal. Smash that like button if you believe in the power of chosen family. Subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that prove it's never too late to rewrite your life. Comment and tell us, what would you have done in Kate's situation? Do you think she made the right choice, accepting Lily as family? Have you ever had to choose between protecting your heart and opening it to love complicated people? Share this story with someone who needs to believe that beautiful new chapters are possible, even after the darkest betrayals. Your support means everything to us. Every like, comment, and share helps us bring you more stories of resilience, love, and the incredible strength of the human heart. What story should we tell next? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, you are stronger than your past, braver than your fears, and worthy of a love story that honors both who you've been and who you're becoming. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community. Until next time, keep believing in beautiful possibilities.